I'm Robbie Dunton, and I am a board member of Trauma Recovery HAP. In fact, I've always been a board member since its inception in 1995, and I'm also the executive director of the EMDR Institute of Francine Shapiro. Well, we started HAP because, Trauma Recovery HAP, because we really believed in giving back. And I think the cornerstones of HAP for me are volunteerism, spirit of giving, and collaboration, relationships. And Francine and I, our relationship was very strong. I mean, not only were we business partners from the very beginning, but Francine and I were friends before she even discovered EMDR. We probably were friends for over 40 years, and but we both came to this friendship through our interest in positive psychology, the teachings of Piaget and Salter and so forth, and so that our interest brought us together. And also, we both loved to go dancing. So we would go dancing with a group of people and just have fun on the weekends. And so our friendship developed over time. And so when she did discover EMDR, she came to some of us who were her friends and said, well, I'd like to, talk to you about something I've discovered. And so we met in a restaurant. We used to go out to dinner and lunch together all the time. And so she said, did anything bother you this week? And I said, well, I don't know. What do you mean? And she goes, well, is there anything that you can remember that sometimes causes you anxiety? And so then that sparked a memory of, I remember when I was 4 or 5 and I had to have my tonsils out. And back then, which is a long time ago, it was just the general thing to do for kids who turn 4 or 5 to take out their tonsils, whether they needed to or not. People don't do that anymore, thank goodness. Anyway, so I remembered that experience, and the experience for me was when they put the ether mask on my face. I truly thought I was suffocating and dying. And I remember threatening the doctors and the nurses. And so that experience, when I brought that up, it really brought up a lot of fear and anxiety. So she used what we called then EMD with the eye movements. And it was remarkable, that anxiety, that terrible feeling I had in my stomach, that feeling of being sick and nauseated, it just started to go away. And I started saying, well, yeah, that's over in the past. That was a long time ago. And also the doctors and nurses were trying to help me, they weren't trying to hurt me. And so that was like, I went, wow, Francine, this is amazing. So I think Francine and I, with the encouragement of other people, said we need to start something that can impact these people who need it the most, who couldn't afford to perhaps do therapy, or lived in a community where there weren't therapists, or lived in a part of the world that was, economically deprived. And so that's what did it. And we really wanted to bring EMDR therapy to these communities around the world that were underserved. And what was so beautiful about it is that the people who had been trained in EMDR wanted to give back. And that's how HAP started. It was the spirit of giving and volunteerism that had the impact that made me passionate about it. And it was so exciting. I mean, they were saying, I want to go after this disaster, and I want to help after 9/11, and I want to be part of a community to help where there's been fires, and go to India and wherever. And that's what made the difference. Seeing these people who were so enthusiastic and bubbling with happiness to want to make other people happy. That's what it was. It was about giving back. You know, EMDR has evolved quite a bit for sure. I mean, when you think of when we started it, well, first of all, Francine discovered it in the 1980s. And at that time, we started doing small trainings for small groups, and the two of us would travel around. And sometimes we'd go to VA centers and do small groups there. Sometimes we'd go to hospitals and do small groups there. And so I don't think we ever knew or understood how it would grow so quickly, but it did. But I think I have to attribute that growth to Francine, because as I said, she was inspiring. And when we would go and she would do her presentation and I would do the logistics and do some of the facilitating, every time I would listen to her, I listened to her, week after week for years after years. I felt inspired when I came away from her lecture. And that's what I think she created and brought to not only her brilliance and her amazing ideas and her articulence, but she brought a sense of humor, and she just made people walk out of there going, wow. I'll never forget when Francine and I went to Bali in 2010 for the first EMDR Asia conference. Now, realize EMDR Asia involves many, many countries. I can't even tell you how many, but many, many. All who have been trained through EMDR HAP. A lot of it thanks to Rosalie Thomas and Shushma Malhotra, who's also on our board. And when we went to that conference in 2010, they had a board meeting, their new board. And we were sitting in this room with a big oval table, and people in different with different languages, but also wearing different things from their countries. And some of those countries were adversaries. And to sit there and listen to all of them talk about how they wanted to bring EMDR therapy to their underserved communities, to their country, to their people, it brought tears to my eyes. I'll never forget that. And to see this COP and all these countries and I think this is really significant, is one of the main philosophies that we had is that EMDR therapy has no boundaries, no economic, cultural, religious, gender boundaries, that everybody should be able to have EMDR. That's what HAP is doing, making it available to everybody. My hope for the future of trauma recovery HAP is that we can grow the resources that we need, people resources, financial resources, the collaboration of other organizations, that we become even more insistent that there's no boundaries culturally, that the research goes on, because there's becoming more and more applications of EMDR to different diagnoses, different situations. So we need, and that was Francine's mantra, research, research, research to everybody, wherever we went. And she's right, because if you don't have the research to support these protocols in the therapy, then it doesn't have credibility. But also for trauma recovery HAP to keep building that capacity and sustainability, to keep going there and building training teams that can carry on this work. The Shapiro effect means to me that it's something that's created a ripple effect, that everybody involved, whether it was, Francine started it, her passion, her inspiration, her love for people and helping the world, rippled out to all of us, myself, to everybody involved in HAP, every clinician who's been trained, every association. And what we have to remember that all the associations, all the communities in the world that are EMDR communities were started by volunteers. And so I think that that's an honor to Francine. So I think the Shapiro effect is not only the broad spectrum of the ripple effect, because she used to talk about the ripple effect all the time, but it's also giving honor to her and respect to her, because I don't want anybody ever to forget who Francine was, and that was because of her gift and her willingness and her fight to give it to the world that we all have to respect and honor her.